Hello, friends. Welcome back. I'm Dr. Surya Ganduri, your host for this weekly internet radio show on developing leadership through self awareness, a series of talks using the knowledge from the principles of quantum physics and wisdom of beliefs. These radio talk shows are part of the Quantum Leap radio presentations, where I invite celebrated mentors from around the world to share with you on how to thrive and empower yourself in this evolving global environment. And this special feature is held on every third Saturday of the month when you can listen to a unique monthly roundtable live discussion involving these experts in business, academia, and life in general. On rest of the Saturdays, you can listen to my views on these weekly internet radio talk shows at 8 p.m. Chicago time. Tonight's topic is a continuation of the presentation that I began last month on how ego inflicts blind spots in our path to success, in which I identified many traps that ego creates. And in the past few episodes, I talked about three of the ego traps. Tonight, I will address the fourth ego trap, not letting go of control. Let me start with a little word, micromanager. It's a term we have all heard before, and not without at least a little disdain. Many people complain about micromanagers, but none of us ever actually admit to being one. Why would we? The micromanager is seen as meddling, untrusting, and counterproductive. The micromanager may even be thought of as a control freak. By the time individuals reach the level of CXO in the senior executive suite, the era of micromanaging has long since passed. There is a strategy to develop, markets to study, and decisions to make. There are talented people to develop, not to mention the constant daily needs of attending to the health and well being of your business. There is simply no time or space for micromanaging once you reach the top levels of the corporate structure. Or is there? In my years of working with and observing the senior executives and business founders in many companies, I've been surprised to see that micromanaging is not confined to the mid level manager. It can show up all the way at the top and may be most prevalent among young leaders who struggle with how to delegate and how much latitude to give their team. At the heart of micromanagement is an ego based failure to let go of control, the subject of ego trap number four. A particularly dramatic example of this failure can be seen in the example of Bruce, the president of a public accounting company, who just could not keep his hands out of the organization's planning for a global leadership conference. Bruce, who was known for thinking that training was a waste of time and money, reluctantly agreed to offer a day of education after being pressured to do so, but only if the training could be added on to the end of an already scheduled global conference. Bruce delegated the task of determining the content of the learning event to the Chief Administrative Officer, who then delegated it to Susan, the Director of Human Resources, who was a strong professional with many years of experience in organizing and managing learning events. Once Susan started to dig into the planning, she expressed some concerns about adding a full day of training at the end of a week long conference. She worried that participants would be fatigued and that it would be difficult to meet the needs of 100 global executives in such a short time frame. It was challenging enough to encapsulate executive leadership development that should take months into a single day, let alone adding it to the end of a busy conference. So, Susan suggested to her boss, the CAO, that the learning should be conducted separately from the meeting so it could be customized and better internalized. When Bruce heard about Susan's pushback, he skipped past the CAO to Susan directly and vehemently disagreed with her via email. It would be too expensive, he argued, to have people travel again solely for training. In his words, since they're all there anyway, we must just deliver leadership training. Realizing that there was no avoiding the single day of training, Susan reached out to me and together we worked hard to create the best possible solution. Of course, I was clear upfront regarding the disadvantages of this approach and suggested that we set realistic expectations regarding the possible impact and outcomes. Our plan involved setting up breakout groups by functional area and delivering the most powerful content based on the venue constraints and audience profile. Susan submitted her recommendations again with the associated costs to her boss. Again, Bruce skipped the CAO and responded directly to Susan stating, costs are too high, agenda is attached, have your folks on the skills training hire advocate trainers to deal with 4 groups of 25. Huh? Susan had trouble making sense of Bruce's directive, but she worried that if she replied with clarifying questions, she might come across as defensive or instigative. When leaders like Bruce insert themselves into the mix, they can be cryptic and unclear in their commands, assuming others are on their wavelength and will easily see the thinking behind their instructions. Often, this low EQ, high ego behavior simply complicates the situation for people who are just trying to do the best job possible. What's more, although Bruce was dismissive of training on one hand, on the other hand, he wanted to be involved in details he did not know much about, like adult learning, learner needs assessments, best practices for content retention, and so on. This did not uh, make for a good combination, and it put Susan in a very difficult predicament. Susan also found it confusing to have the president step in, and as she now did not know whether to advocate for what she felt would be the most effective for the participants' actual learning, or to put aside her own expertise in order to bow to the big boss's wishes and keep him happy. Add to that the fact that she reported to the CAO, not to the president of the company, and she was baffled about how to proceed. Needless to say, the CIO was none too happy to be sidestepped either. Susan was suffering from the president's fall into his ego trap. When the leader fails to let go of control over tasks that have been or should be delegated to other team members. The case of Bruce and Susan points to a very common theme I have seen over the past 20 years, especially when it comes to budget. Senior executives have a very hard time trusting that their high-level direct reports will be fiscally responsible. As a result, after delegating assignments, they meddle and micromanage. They fail to let go of control. So, a look at this ego trap will show whether you are focusing on the right leadership issues and tasks or getting caught up in less essential roles. Do you stay focused on developing strategy, growing and engaging the talent, and keeping an eye on the overall business landscape? Do you stay informed of all of the significant goings on at the company and making sure your team works well together? Or are you, like Bruce, getting drawn into the way events are planned, how smaller amounts of money are spent, and the kind of email font everyone in the company should use? By shifting to an EQ-based approach, you will be able to clear your plate of any nitty-gritty activities that take you away from the more high-level responsibilities the organization needs you to fill. In the process, you will strengthen your team as they gain opportunities to do the work they are good at without worrying about being second-guessed or wasting their time. Ego trap number 4 can confound both the traditional corporate CEO and the business founder who fails to let go of operational tasks as the business grows. Terry, a brilliant deal maker whose small business was bought by a Fortune 500 company. And this is one such example. Terry, a Latino gentleman with a fiery personality, he grew up in a war-torn Colombia. His incredible street smarts and the ability to negotiate his way out of difficult situations served him well as a business owner. He came to the United States as a teenager and by his late 20s was a thriving entrepreneur in a software development business. The small business did so well under his stewardship that it was sold to a Fortune 500 company, which allowed Terry and his team to continue operating as an independent subsidiary. As president of this subsidiary, Terry did not see a need to change the way he led the company and went along with business as usual, including his mercurial tendencies. This meant that his good moods and bad moods were still clear to everyone. Eventually, the parent company began to get more involved, giving Terry and his team more business, and eventually buying another small company and putting Terry in charge of the merger of his former company and the newly acquired one. Diving deep into the details, Terry personally made all personnel decisions. Because he placed loyalty above all else, he very quickly eliminated many of the new company's employees without considering their talent or what the newly combined company would need going forward. He then set out to review the work of all employees, drafting his own versions of the job descriptions and workflow. In his words, he felt that he wanted to stay very focused and tactical regarding job roles over the next few months. Terry also personally led all staff meetings. And because he had a hard time not being involved in the details, he had all functional areas report directly to him. By the time I was brought in as a team advisor, Terry's group had grown to almost 80 employees and had been physically relocated to an office at the parent company's sprawling campus. Terry's visibility was growing, as were concerns about his ability to lead the division he was responsible for. Although his division was quite profitable, his group consistently missed deadlines and became known for team conflict. Making matters worse, these concerns were kept from Terry, so he did not realize that conversations about his future were happening at the CEO level. In fact, the parent company executives were so concerned about Terry's reaction to being told an executive coach was hired to help him, they asked me to call myself a team advisor to be less threatening. After I met with Terry's 14 direct reports, the following became clear. Terry often stepped into the middle of everything, which the team felt was making it difficult for the group to be operationally optimized. Two, because Terry was in control of allocating all resources, personality issues between departments sometimes erupted as groups fought to protect their own turf and look good to Terry. And three, Terry was rated lower as a leader than he otherwise might have been because he confused his team about who should do what. The group gave Terry an overall rating of a 6 on a scaling of 1 to 10, 1 being the low and 10 being the highest. Many said they would have given him an 8 or even a 9 if he had been able to make expectations, roles, and responsibilities clearer. All signs pointed to the reality that Terry was unable to relinquish control. For a business founder like Terry, who had built the original company from bottom to top, stepping out of operations to play more of a conductor role just did not come naturally. Not only did he feel he had valuable expertise to share by staying involved in operations, he enjoyed it. Getting involved in things like dictating how to beta test a new software or deciding what piece of equipment to purchase came automatically to him, and he liked being a part of the action. It was a classic situation for a founder who had built the business from the ground up and who had not yet figured out how to make the transition to leader of a large organization. The tendency for leaders like Terry to keep control comes primarily from the following sources. One, a belief that nothing can get done with the same quality or standard without the leader's direct involvement. 2. Failure to learn new executive leadership skills and behaviors. 3. Concern about misconduct that could lead to a scandal. 4. Fear of becoming irrelevant or out of touch. 5. A misguided approach to demonstrating passion and desire to teach and educate others. And 6. Desire to be seen as a hardworking member of the team and not a fat cat ivory tower executive. Let's look at a few of these in greater depth. The first of these reasons relates to psychological inflation, what Inc. magazine described as a political euphemism for egomania, the belief that you can perform a particular task better than anyone else. In this case, leaders may have concerns about the competence of their team or may have a perfectionist streak and simply feel that no preventable error is acceptable. Naturally, if leaders feel they are better at executing certain responsibilities than the team members, it will be tempting to step in and do things for them. Then there is the second reason, which relates to the old habits leaders may have of making operational decisions, habits that brought them much success in earlier days. If, when serving in the lower ranks of an organization or working as a startup business owner, leaders were used to doing, operating, and executing, it will take conscious effort on their part to shift and grow into a new self-perception. This requires a changed paradigm about what they should be responsible for once they become executive leaders. Seeing responsibilities like building and motivating the executive team and setting the strategic direction of the company as a primary function of the leader's role may take quite a bit of mindful rewiring. In addition, leaders may feel the need to stay heavily involved in operations in order to make sure the company avoids any major scandals. This is a fair goal. Business cases like Enron, WorldCom, and Health South Corporation are enough to send shivers down the back of every senior executive about the dangers of losing touch with the goings-on inside their organizations. This kind of fear is a common driver behind an executive's inability to let go of decision rights, especially those related to customers. This is understandable, but we will look at better ways of handling that fear than micromanaging. But first, let's identify how you know that you have fallen into ego trap. You know you have fallen into ego trap number 4 if you have more than 10 direct reports. You know you have fallen into ego trap if you cannot help but get involved in seemingly minor details just for peace of mind. You know you have fallen into ego trap if you spend much of your time focused inward on company operations and very little looking outward at industry or business landscape. You know you have fallen into ego trap if when you are away from the office, decisions grind to a halt, or it seems nothing gets done until you return, validating, of course, that you are indeed indispensable and your senior team is helpless without you. You know you have fallen into ego trap if you see yourself as the ultimate quality control inspector. You know you have fallen into ego trap if you feel people need very detailed instructions in order to perform at their very best. Ironically, in some cases, micromanaging leaders may see themselves as low ego, ultimate servant leaders. They may think, look at me, I'm rolling up my sleeves and working side by side with the troops. In reality, what may look like helping is not helpful at all because the group often does not need another operator. They need a leader. In most cases, the leader's need to be involved slows down the work of the group as other things sit and wait for the leader to review or approve them. This is the most common complaint I hear from employees who work for leaders caught in this trap. Inc. magazine makes an interesting distinction between control and leadership that may help highlight how ego plays into ego trap. Control is about making sure orders and work requirements are carried out by following management's plans and directions. Leadership, on the other hand, is based on setting clear objectives, delegating authority, relinquishing control, and trusting staff. When guided by control, the leader retains power, so the ego remains appeased. When guided by the principles of leadership, the executive or business founder lets go of power, empowering the team instead of and setting aside any ego needs to be directly involved. Only with the self-awareness, empathy, and self-control that come with EQ can leaders gain the understanding and discipline needed to cede control to the team so they can meet organizational objectives by exercising their own power and agency. Sometimes this trap plays out in a more well-meaning fashion, as it did for Terry, who simply had a passion for operations. While Terry would not have strong-armed an employee as Bruce did, he would certainly show up with a smile at one of his direct reports' desks, ready to make plans and settle on logistics for something that he should have had no part in. Whether the leader refuses to give up control because of a strong personality, as with Bruce, or because of a passion for operations, as with Terry, the ego guides the leader in ego trap to make decisions and behave in ways that make him feel comfortable at the expense of others' comfort. As for Terry, over time, upper management became more honest with him about their concerns, and eventually Terry realized, with the help of coaching, that he could not be so involved in everything. In fact, he hired a chief operating officer to manage the team and run the operations, freeing him up to meet with customers and make deals. Terry's division is thriving because He was able to take a hard look at his weaknesses, make some important decisions, and let his EQ exceed his ego. When I checked in with Terry, asking him how he thought he would handle having a COO in place and the opportunity to step back, let go of some control, and stay focused on more strategic directional issues, Terry admitted, "It will be so hard for me not to meddle because honestly, I know this business better than anyone else here." Making the transition would not be easy, but Terry took the first step by bringing the chief operational officer on board and committing to letting her do her job. So, if you should discover that staying out of operations and letting go of control is a challenge for you, begin by looking within. Ask yourself questions like, is this something I should be this involved with? How I have I delegated this to someone else, but am I still too far in? Is my involvement slowing everything down? Am I just gathering information, or am I now in the middle of something telling people what to do? What would happen if I took my hands off the wheel? What does that tell me about how well I have prepared my next tier leaders for running the business? Then exercise your self awareness and work to recognize when your ego is causing you to step in too far into the weeds. You may feel that the visibility on the assignment is too high. You may realize that you distrust the team's competence, or you may recognize an excitement or over jealousness to be involved yourself in a given project. Rather than let these emotions dictate how you proceed by jumping into operations, step back and consider what the environment needs from you. That's where empathy and reading comes in. Many clients will tell me, I would love to delegate more and get out of the way, but I just can't. My team is already overworked. Or some clients will say, my team is just not capable of this. They need more experience first. If you have thought these things, I want you to stop and look at what is really going on. Did you wait until you knew everything before making decisions? Do all signs point to your team being capable and trustworthy, even if they may not approach things the same way you do? If so, what does your team need from you to be successful? Are you making efforts to connect them to the support they need? Or have you created an environment in which your team knows you will do the tasks yourself, conditioning them to appear and perhaps feel incapable? If not, maybe it's time to fix the performance issues or replace them instead of working around them. Just as important, what kind of messages are your team members sending you when you get involved? Do they thrive on your conversations, or do they seem deflated? Do they seem energized or irritated and confused? If you were in their shoes, would you be comfortable with your boss being this involved, or would you find it too hands-on and demoralizing? These questions are meant to help you self-diagnose so you can tune in to what your team really needs from you to be successful. And so you too can find a new, deeper level of fulfillment in your role. With a good read on your team and insight into your own ego state, you will have the information you need to respond appropriately and consciously. If fear of overspending drives you, consider letting this worry go, trusting your team to be fiscally responsible. Is there past evidence of people going crazy on the company's dime? Or is yours an irrational fear? If there is a budget already approved for the project, then remind yourself that as long as the project is on budget, you should stay out of it. And if you feel uncertain of a team member's competence, take the leap of faith to let the person run with a smaller project on their own to cut their teeth and build your confidence in them. A major part of any leader's job is to develop a bench of capable talent. You will only know how the person operates if you let her try. Lastly, don't be afraid of mistakes. They are sure to happen. They happened to you in the past and probably serve today as some of your best learning experiences. The same goes for your team. In most cases, there is a certain sense of serenity that comes with surrendering and accepting that unintended consequences are not always terrible. The worst that will happen is that some of your fears will come true, but you will have a new lens with which to view the situation. You will see the gaps, learning needs, job misfits, and assumptions that you failed to see from your controlling mindset. These are invaluable tools you can now use to target where you want to improve the organization, focusing your passions and energy on goals that have much greater significance and impact. In the end, you as a leader have to define for yourself when it is appropriate to get involved in a situation. It can be helpful to come up with some clear thresholds to guide you as to when to get involved in projects and decisions versus when you should stay out of the fray. For example, you might come up with a financial threshold, such as I will be involved in any financial decision that involves more than X number of dollars. But if anything below that, my team is capable of handling. Or it may be that all safety issues must escalate to you. You can also find an accountability partner to call you on your controlling tendencies when you cross the line. By developing clearer guidelines for when to let go of control, inviting others to hold you accountable, and accepting that it may always feel uncomfortable to trust, you will develop strong tools to help you avoid the urge to micromanage. On the other hand, you have taken a good look at the situation and realize that you don't trust your team to perform to your standards and expectations. Now what? For starters, I recommend that you do the psychological inflation test to see whether your own beliefs may be at the heart of the problem. Are you convinced that no one else can do the job as well as you? Do you think you alone can get the best result? If so, consider the possibility that your ego-based beliefs are causing you to micromanage rather than any real incompetence on the part of your team. Most management teams really do have the skills and potential to handle assignments well. The issue lies more with the leader's inability to fully delegate and stay out of projects. If you are stuck in this ego trap, it's time to give your team members a try. You won't know whether they can perform unless you give them the opportunity. If after you allow your team members to manage projects and handle tasks, some truly emerge as inept, you may have a performance issue on your hands that requires replacing a team member. But don't rush to judgment. It's important to give people time to grow and learn. Remember, mistakes are great learning tools. It's okay too for your people to use a different approach than you. After all, they are really not you. They never will be, and that's okay. In a nutshell, the question for some leaders may be how to give up control at a time when scandals are breaking every day. It's fine to delegate in theory, these leaders may say, but in practice, the CEO has to stay in the weeds because it's always the CEO who is responsible when the ship starts to sink. As one executive put it to me, this can't fail. My fingerprints are all over it. And if the CEO is not mixed into operations, how will he catch a $6 billion mistake before it happens or prevent the 200 million gallon oil spill? Well, it's a fair question. No leader wants a scandal to happen on his watch, be it a huge financial loss, a product that's harmed consumers, or an oil spill that damages precious wildlife. Yet, it is not by managing every decision or putting a personal seal on each and every company initiative that you as a leader avoid scandal and keep the company financially upright. Instead, it is by staying informed. It's by having really good processes in place for keeping you aware of important company operations, metrics, issues, and challenges. It's by making sure that people feel comfortable being honest with you, allowing you to avoid ego traps, and that team members who have perspectives different from yours are capable of raising counter perspectives and detecting red flags, allowing you to avoid ego traps. Although it may feel safer at first to stay involved in operations and execution, by instead focusing on staying informed of operations, you can better keep your head above the daily din and see more of what's going on across the organization. That is the leader's job, not the daily grind. It's not your job to stay in the details and micromanage every challenge the company faces in each and every department, but instead to lead your people in the strategic direction you envision. If you feel that you must micromanage, then you don't trust. And if you don't trust, you place artificial limits on your company's ability to grow. So, how do you apply the three R's? The recognize, read, and respond. Recognize that all roads lead to Rome, or at least many of them do. Is your way really the only way to proceed? Recognize that your do it my way impulse may not serve your organization well. That's self awareness. Read the situation and the employee to determine how much involvement you really should have. That's empathy. Is your leadership required in approving the purchase of every single iPhone for your legal team? No. Is it required in deciding on a capital expense of $1 billion? Probably. Respond according to the results delivered and measure your reaction without overreacting either positively or negatively. That's self control. If your employee managed the weekly meeting effectively, meaning that he made progress and fully engaged the participants, congratulate your employee on a job well done, even if he did not do it your way. Did not get the results you desired? Respond with constructive and developmental input, not anger. I think I will stop with that for now. Stay tuned for discussion on other ego-related traps in future. Let me know if I can be of any service or help in any areas that I discussed tonight. I wish you good luck and great inspiration in your journey. I also hope that whether you listened to this live on air broadcast or listening to the recorded audio from the archives, have heard something that resonated well with you, or even know somebody in your life who could benefit from this discussion. If so, I would encourage you to share this discussion with them and ask them to get in touch with me if I could be of further assistance to them. I hope you heard something useful while listening to this radio talk as much as I have enjoyed presenting it tonight. Please tune in every Saturday at 8 p.m. Chicago time as I discuss other topics in this internet radio talk show. Also, remember that Quantum Leap radio broadcasts on a variety of topics every week and also in a roundtable format each month by coaches and mentors who are highly recommended as the cream of the crop and best of the best out there that have been recognized and established in the business world and life in general. Namaste.